final session before the awards later. ये जो final session है ये है the Realty Plus Special Real Talk Session. ये जो कॉन्वर्सेशन होने वाला है, बेसिकली द फॉर्मेट जो सपना ने हमेशा क्यूरेट किया है फ्रॉम हर एंड इज दैट कि वन ऑफ द मोस्ट लेजेंडरी फिगर्स एंड पर्सनालिटीज़ जो होते हैं रियल एस्टेट स्पेस के, रियल एस्टेट डोमेन के, एक पर्टिकुलर शहर के या एक पर्टिकुलर लैंडस्केप के, उनको लेके ये कॉन्वर्सेशंस होते हैं, उनके सक्सेस स्टोरीज़ को लेके डिकोड किया जाता है एंड उनसे इंस्पिरेशन एंड प्रेरणा भी लिया जाता है सो दैट कैसे बाकी के लोग जो सेम फ्रेटर्निटी में हैं वो लोग भी ऐसे ही बेहतरीन काम करके अपने अपने रिस्पेक्टिव ग्रुप्स का नाम रोशन करें. सो आज का ये जो सब्जेक्ट है, आज का ये जो मुद्दा है यहाँ पे, वो भी ऐसे ही एक चीज़ को लेके एक स्पेशल रियल्टी प्लस रियल टॉक होने वाला है. This is a special conversation, ladies and gentlemen, that's exploring the forces shaping the future of India's real estate sector with a very, very special focus on the growth story and opportunities emerging in Indore. Basically, Indore का जो growth story है और आगे की जो opportunities है, उसको हम लोग बहुत ही बेहतरीन तरीके से समझेंगे ये सेशन में.
दो चलेंगे.
ये सेशन के लिए मैं सबसे पहले बुलाना चाहूँगा हमारे स्पीकर को जो मोरलेस मॉडरेट भी करेंगी. शी इज़ बीन एन आर्किटेक्ट बाय प्रोफेशन and after an active architectural practice for more than a decade, she forayed into the field of journalism 2006 में and तब से लेके उनका काम बहुत ही अनेक major national newspapers में publish हुआ है. वो एक regular guest expert भी है for a lot of real estate shows. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sapna Srivastava, the editor of Realty Plus. Please, Sapna, thank you so much. I'll request आपको please बैठ जाइए. And सपना को join करने के लिए यहाँ पे हमारे साथ मौजूद है एन एक्सपर्ट जिनके पास 27 साल से भी ज़्यादा का तजुर्बा है इन रिस्क कंसल्टिंग प्रैक्टिस एंड हैज़ सिग्निफिकेंट एक्सपीरियंस इन सप्लाई चेन फंक्शन इन एफएमसीजी, कंज्यूमर ड्यूरेबल्स, फार्मा, ईपीसी, ईएनआर एंड टेक्सटाइल सेक्टर्स. हमारे जो आज के ये गेस्ट स्पीकर है, ही हैज सर्विस 300+ क्लाइंट्स across 15+ countries including India, US, Europe, the Middle East and Southeast Asia. इनके बारे में ये कहा जाता है इनके इंट्रोडक्शन की ज़रूरत नहीं है, but I think that is the biggest part of his introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the one and only partner and head, India Global, KPMG in India, Neeraj Bansal ji. Bansal ji के लिए please जोर से तालियां. He has flown in specially for all you incredible people at Indore. So आप लोगों को मैं रिक्वेस्ट करूंगा थोड़ा सा और if we can give him some respect by clapping for him. Mr. Bansal के लिए जोर से तालियां please. And Sapna, over to you.
Thanks, Shubhajit. And in the introduction of Mr. Bansal, I would like to add that वो इतना ट्रैवल करते हैं कि कौन से दिन वो दुनिया के कौन से सिटी में हैं ये ट्रैक रखना बड़ा मुश्किल है. So it's really such a pleasure to have you in Indore today with us. And Neeraj ji, we are talking about emerging cities. हमारे जो discussions हुए अभी तक उसमें a lot of people spoke about Indore, what's happening here, what's happening in other similar cities. Now, what is the fundamental shift you have seen in Indian real estate, especially in terms of जो emerging corridors हैं? Why are they now attracting investors, developers, even businesses also? So what is that shift happening in India?
First of all, thank you so much, Sapna, for inviting me. Thank you so much, Neeraj ji and Tripti, for this opportunity. Always a pleasure to be back with Realty Plus event and also with the real estate community. Clearly, your question is a very valid question and an important one as well. जिस तरह से हम देखते हैं अभी जितनी भी इमर्जिंग सिटीज़ हैं, टीयर 2 हैं, हमारी टीयर 2 सिटीज़ के अंदर टिपिकली पहले ये था कि अफोर्डेबिलिटी वाज अ बिग थिंग and they were not considered as a main economic center essentially. But abhi last few years se what we have seen is that they have emerged as a independent economic center. The way the infrastructure is developed, the way the expressways have come up, the connectivity has gone up, the logistics hubs have come up, also the proliferation post-COVID, in terms of work from home or work remotely, which has started, that has tremendously benefited, the tier 2 cities as well, because people do not need to travel back to the main cities. They can actually work from their main city or the native city as well there, and which is what we are signing as a big change that has happened there. And from if you were to look at some, let's say some broad numbers as well on that, so tier 2 cities today, let's say, contribute about $690 to $700 billion there in that. And by 2030, the expectation is they'll go threefold to $2 trillion. So the major economic growth that has to happen from an India context has to come from the tier 2 cities there in that. So इस तरह से हम देखते हैं जब उसको कि information भी वही support कर रही है, और on ground also, that is what we see happening right now, that with the immense amount of connectivity that has happened, some of these towns, the distances have become actually shorter, from a transit point of view there. And also अगर हम जैसे अगर इंदौर की बात करें, for example, where we are today as well, Indore has always been an education hub as well. We have got IIT also, we've got IIM as well, we've got very strong healthcare facilities also, AIMS is also here. So we've got 40 plus colleges, which are based out of Indore. So that creates a very strong talent pool as well. So because of that also, what you find is कि that tier 2 cities के अंदर जहाँ पे talent है, and अगर infra improve हो गया है, तो then the big companies want to see that can they set up their business place over there as well, and see that they are able to operate from there. उनको cost का benefit मिलता है, and then they get let's say good developers also, which are local developers, उनको भी प्रोत्साहन मिलता है. And as we find that the national developers will start to come to that city as well. So overall growth is happening in tier 2 cities because of that.
So affordability is not now the only criteria for all the emerging cities. The quality of life, economic, especially they are becoming economic centers, as you said, and availability of skilled workforce because of the educational hubs that like we see in Indore, and obviously the connectivity. वो कुछ अभी जैसे last panel में हुआ था कि अभी एक ही international flight है इंदौर से, which should increase. So connectivity, economic driver, the availability of skilled talent pool, and affordability in some sense in terms of the land pieces. So these are the drivers for attracting people now to the emerging corridors. So अभी जो पिछले भी discussions हमने सुने कि it is no more the question or discussion about growth happening in emerging cities, but it is how to sustain that growth and make them globally competitive. So आपके overall perspective में, where does the role of policy makers and public and private collaboration comes in? What is the ideal scenario for emerging cities?
No, absolutely. And I think very beautifully you said public and private, because काफ़ी बार होता है कि discussions में या debates के अंदर we sometimes use public versus private, and which I always say, and the policy makers also would like to believe that it is not public versus private, it's public and private. there दोनों का अपना role है, and policy का is a very important role. Government has to set the vision, government has to set the growth path. Government has to set the boundaries or the regulations part of it there, and it has to give certainty or predictability in terms of how the law will unfold as well. Once those have been set up, the other thing which is important from the government side is the infra, part of it, that they need to have those infra mentioned over there as well, that what will come where and when aspect of it there. The moment we have that, the private capital can then come in, the private speed for execution can come in as well, and more certainty can come in from the completion of the projects part of it as well. And this is what we find as well, wherever there has been a strong infra that has been developed, and there's been a more continuity in terms of the political, let's say the philosophy as well, and if the pro-investment mindset is there, then the private investment just flows into that area, and the success starts to come in as well there. And typically you will find that for a government perspective, which you said, I think a very important thing is that they need to see that the interdepartmental workflows are designed well, and approvals में हमारा time unnecessarily ज़्यादा नहीं लग रहा है. Approvals में एक limited time है, boundary wise पे हमारा time लग के we are able to get that clearance as well there in that. And if I take one example, if I take an example here, like Telangana, we've got the Smart Build Telangana approach as well. So, जैसे उन्होंने portal develop करा, जैसे उन्होंने अपनी technology use करी, तो there is a predictability. If you've submitted for building plan approval, you know that within this amount of time, the building plan approval will come. So then you can plan your finances, you can plan your execution capacity also, and you can actually complete the project. You can commit to the customers as well accordingly. Likewise, if you look at Maharashtra, again, transit-oriented development, metro corridors are the one which they have been really focusing on. And again, as they have been able to give more predictability in terms of, when the projects will get finished, the other actions around that can happen as well there. So which is where the policymaker role comes like in a very crystal clear way to say that they need to set the vision and the growth and the hunger and the direction part of it there. The balance part, the actual execution and doing part is something which the private will be able to take it up and do that as well. And we will find as well that the states which are doing it more clearly, some of the southern states have been very aggressive in terms of, putting that, like if you look at Hyderabad, Tamil Nadu as well, Telangana, some of these states have been able to put out their policies well clearly laid out. And also they've not changed those policies, every few months around it there. Yes, and while they may be evolving around it, but that's corrections around that. But they've not really made a drastic change because businesses don't like, basically surprises there in that. So even if the taxes are high, just for example's sake only, like which is what when we discuss with our international customers, clients around it, they always say that, that even if the tax rate is high, if we know that the tax is going to be high for this 5 years, 10 years period, or if there's a direction, that it is going up by 2%, going up by 5%, or going down by 5%. If they have that clarity, then they can bake into their plans and then actually build the business around it. But when there is uncertainty, when there's no clarity in terms of, which regime will come up, how it will be done, that is the time then difficulties come up in terms of making large investments.
Right. So basically one is the setting the direction for the policy makers. That is one big job. Set the direction, make course corrections, and more importantly, transparency. The transparency in terms of communication to the business community, what is happening, what is not happening, how long it's going to happen. So transparency and basically ease of doing business.
Correct.
That is where the whole policy maker role comes in, and then obviously that will create the public-private collaborations and enhance the execution, as you said, by the private.
And we've seen this also like in many examples, like the highways aspect of it. The ministry made 3 or 4 ways of going out and bidding out the highway contracts. The initial approaches never succeeded, and we had a lot of change in that. They got the feedback done. Once the hybrid annuity model got settled, then you've seen that, the amount of growth that has happened on the highway side of it there. Same way for the ultra mega power plant as well. In the energy sector also, we've seen that initially there were some hiccups and challenges because when the new policy comes up, sometimes the consultation is not adequate or there is more direction has to become for that. But if there's a more listening mindset, feedback loop is there in that, then we see that the betterment happens, on that area.
We are in Indore. So Indore में there are a lot of sectors which are doing well. Manufacturing है, logistics है, GCC भी अभी आ रहा है, tourism है because of the spiritual fame of this city. Out of all the sectors, which sector do you think will create the strongest real estate demand in the coming years for Indore?
So rightly you said, I would say that that maybe not fully fair to pick up one sector entirely on it there, but if I may say that manufacturing and logistics are the one which create a very strong demand in any city around it. Indore is no exception. Indore in fact has a central regional hub there from an India perspective, and has done exceedingly well on the manufacturing side of it, whether you look at textiles, you look at pharma part of it there as well. And many other industrial, like the hubs have been there as well on that. So we've seen a growth that has happened in those areas aspect of it. At the same time, very initially when I was mentioning around it, I think the remote working culture as well as the GCC, or the what you mentioned also, the global captive centers. This is one very big area that has come up for all the cities which have got talent available with them. Indore is a great city from a talent pool point of view, given the fact that the education institutions have been there for a long period of time and are churning out very, very high quality talent there, and something which is very, I would say, employable from a GCC standpoint there in that. And and given the Madhya Pradesh overall also has adopted a policy for attracting GCCs, to the state, Indore basically benefits, from that as well. And if I were to just to kind of give a couple of numbers, I mean, like 5,000 crores of FDI, got, let's say, earmarked for, Indore part of it, and 700 crores is basically coming in GCC itself there in that. Now with GCC, what comes is that, while the target is to, let's say, do 50,000 jobs, even if it is 40,000 jobs as well. Today also we've got more than 100 ITS companies which are present in Indore. Whether you look at TCS, look at DCT, there are so many that are present in Indore right now. As the growth of these, the ITS companies happen, as the growth of GCC companies happen around it, there will be a very, very sustained residential demand. There will be a very, very sustained office demand, and that office demand also moving into a A-grade office demand around it, again, which is going to be LEED certified, is going to be green compatible there in that, so many things would basically improve, from a standards perspective as well. And, the other thing which happens from an Indore perspective is the fact that it's an education hub. So that also, while it retains the talent, that talent also requires student housing, that talent also requires, the various kinds of, residential housing to come in as well. So from a real estate perspective, if you look at Indore, I think Indore today offers, let's say from an investor point of view, a very diversified portfolio, that you've got opportunities to buy land at a good price. You've got, opportunities to buy apartments, flats kind of a thing, villas, plotted area aspect of it there, which is a very high demand area in Indore. Then you also have got, aspects around investments in healthcare, given the population growth that is happening, cities expanding as well. You spoke about logistics side of it. So there is, again, on the logistics part of it as well, there is possibilities of, warehousing investments to happen in Indore there. So from a developer's perspective also, there's a need to look at a diversified portfolio to see that there is more sustained growth also, as well as there is a resilience built into the business there and that. Likewise for the investors also to look at a more diversified portfolio for them. So there is opportunities for a lot many people in Indore versus, let's say, another city there.
So it will not be correct to pick up one sector, but look at a diversified portfolio, because Indore, as you rightly said, has much to offer.
Correct.
Its strategic location, with a very good connectivity with all the states.
Absolute strong connectivity to Mumbai, to Ahmedabad, to Delhi.
Correct.
I mean, these are like, big hubs around it. And also more expressway connectivity coming in as well there.
Right. Also, we had recently done one story on, cities becoming brands. Like you have Big Apple, New York, everyone knows, fashion capital, immediately Paris comes to mind. Do you think, any of these emerging cities, we would see something like a brand? Mumbai ko bolte hain, it's a financial capital of India, but not like a global level. Yes, Silicon Valley of India, Bangalore ho gaya. Any city you feel like, in the emerging cities, it will become like a big brand in itself?
So far, I think we've kind of limited our cities to, more like tourism or spirituality, the various aspects of it there. But I think, this is an area where consciously, if the, and maybe going back to the second question that you had, that when the policymakers are setting out a vision, if they drive that particular aspect, more carefully, to say that, they've got a very unified vision, because some of this branding will take, somewhere 7 to 10 years as well. It's not like a year-long campaign. It's something which has to be sustained over a period of time. And that is a direction which, if the government takes on it, and also the, would like say the think tanks of the particular city will also have to come together to suggest, in terms of, how that can be developed around it. Then you would find that, that kind of a tag does come in naturally to that city as well there. But yeah, in terms of, I think it's a great thought and a great idea to move forward as well.
Yeah, I think Indore can build on the cleanest city tag. It can
7 times in a row.
Yeah, in a row. So, those were overall picture of how you see, you've been advising a lot of, in your consulting business, a lot of corporates, a lot of businesses. For Indore, for developers, what is your advice to be future ready to keep pace with the growth which is happening in these emerging cities, whether it is Indore, whether it is Chennai, Coimbatore, all these emerging cities? How do developers be future ready?
So, from a developer's perspective, I think so from developers' perspective, I think clearly there are 2-3 key things that are happening around it. One is that the preference, has moved on to say that, we're not looking for a bricks and mortars perspective in that, say there is a house required in that. It's a built-up experience, which has been looked at. So today, wellness, has come in, as a theme to stay. Closeness to work, is also a theme which is there to stay. Community living, is something which was, let's say, at some point in time, not that as a important, but it's an important criteria now in that. Some of the technology parts are something which a buyer is now saying is a given, there in that. Some basic automation in the house is expected. It's not no more a premium kind of a, thing on that. This is something which is expected, aspect of it. I think the buying experience, has also become an important area, part of it. Everything starts online today. 60-70% of the queries are generated online. And so how are we as a developer, present online has become important, from a sales channel point of view there. Also the fact in terms of, from a buyer perspective, especially like if you look at a emerging city scenario, whether it's Indore, whether it's Surat, whether it is, Nagpur, Vizag, we can name 10, 12 cities in this area. But the challenge which comes is that when the buyer is going out to buy a particular property or an apartment there in that, or any other real estate facility, the trust in the developer, the local developer at times, is a challenge situation given the multiplicity of developers which has been there and the kind of track record that has been there in terms of delivery on ground over there. So some of the delays cause that issue in minds of the buyer there. Some of the times there are other issues that have happened in terms of, the let's say the fairness in dealing, and many other aspects do come in there in that. So which is where, some of the good developers in the locally side, when they start looking at it from a little longer perspective, like a 5 or 10 year side of it there, look at it as a side that it is going to grow bigger. And also when some of the national players start to enter the city, you'll find that the national player, when it enters, it gets a premium of 20% as well, at sometimes around it, while the cost may have just gone up 5-7%. But the end, they get a premium of 20%, 25% as well, on the similar kind of product offering around it. That's because the fact that, they are not offering, say, we'll develop in 5 years. They're saying we'll do it in 3 years, we'll do my one, we'll do, various kinds of technology users as well. So for all the developers, the important aspect is to say that embrace technology internally, from an enterprise perspective there in that, embrace technology from a customer facing perspective, but more importantly, get stronger on the processes side of it there. So the commitments that we give into the customer, those are the one which have got backed up, with actual working that will happen to basically deliver happen around there. So when we see this, in the emerging cities also, you find some of these, major developers start to come in there. I'll take example of, let's say, not from Indore, but let's say Lucknow is an example. There's one very large developer over there, which initially, was into land dealing and that and they had done some apartments as well, but they're not doing almost equivalent to large townships there in that. And the kind of the developments that are happening, some of the developments are equivalent of a development that would happen, let's say, in a metro city there in that, from a quality perspective as well. So it's just a matter of a journey which has to be undertaken around it. And very quickly, if I take one very quick example on this there, 12 years back when I was visiting Japan and, I had met with the Japanese developers over there, the fact that they used to talk in billions of square feet, of delivery that they've done. Capital Land is in India. We've worked with them in Singapore and India as well. They are also talking in billion square feet. That kind of outlay is what we should look at. And 12 years back, it used to book a much larger number. But today, our developers, some of the national developers are launching, $1 billion projects today. right? So something which was very far off, I would put it like that, in my own view, 12 years back, has become a reality now. And of course, we'll pick the pace and we will do much more in the coming period as well there at that.
So that's good to know that we are reaching the scale in terms of the kind of work that we are doing and the land that we are developing, as you mentioned, that we are now reaching there. And also, like you mentioned, technology is something which is going to make developers future ready to keep pace with the growth that is happening. And as consumers are now much more aware, so customer centricity, as you mentioned, right from their journey of finding, आज तो online सब देख लेते हैं पहले से ही क्या घर खरीदना है, क्या plot खरीदना है, and by the time they reach the developer, they have already selected, the top 3 or the top 5. So customer centricity, technology, and the scale of projects, and from the developers' end to be more transparent in their dealings with the customer is something which will make them future ready. Now, let's take some quick takeaways from you to end this session. Now, what is that one word that comes to your mind to describe Indian real estate?
Today?
Yeah, today. As of now.
I think, real estate sector is very exciting. The fact that we've got a very large national players emerged. We've got some very, very strong, credible local developers, there as well. We've got REITs, which was a dream at some point in time. But, 2005, I've been hearing and working in some parts, for REIT reality as well. But we've seen them becoming a reality and also becoming a very large force as well. So out of the total office supply, there is a good, strong percentage now is in the institutional grade held by REITs as well there in that. So we got, institutional funding coming into the sector also. I think from the sector perspective, the amount of development the retail has had, and we were discussing, just a while back, that Phoenix Mall has opened in Indore as well. These are very, very strong signs of, maturity of the sector and the depth of the sector as well, and now width also getting, materialized as well. So from a sector perspective, I think, we've seen several cycles also. So many of the developers have seen that they have weathered the issues around it, so they are much more, let's say, able. And of course, we are going through a cautiously, let's say, optimistic scenario at this point in time, with change in sales scenario as well. And at the same time, the geopolitical environment around us has not been very supportive, as well on that. But at the same time, our own customer demand continues to be there, in a strong way. So, which is where, one would say that
so you
it's
think
an interesting
matured
time for...
is the word for Indian real estate today? It is matured?
In pockets, yes. Like an office market side of it, I think we've achieved a very, very good milestone. We produce now amongst the largest green real estate space in the office market, which is nowhere in the world that's getting done there. So that's a
sign of maturity.
We can beat us down a lot, but some places we are doing definitely much better. REITs also, I would say that in a very quick manner that REITs has failed a number of countries, as well. True. It's not that it's been success everywhere. The way the India introduced them and the way all the high quality assets have been put into REITs around it brings that strong confidence that, that is something which is going to go forward in a big way. Of course, retail participation is less at this point in time, but as the product gets more understood
residential is not there. So matured in a sense that Indian real estate is getting matured. One policy reform that will transform Indian real estate, what would be, if you have to name one policy reform? So
again, very difficult to pinpoint, let's say, a single reform, but I'll just say two things. One, I think RERA was one of the transformational reforms, that the country has seen. Some of the amendments and changes, and we recently worked on some of those aspects also. They've been submitted to the government as well. We hope that, the government's able to, move through some of these amendments and some of the changes as well, make the RERA more, I would say, effective and also uniformly implemented. That has, because RERA actually has brought back the confidence of buyers. 2017, we had the loss of trust from the buyer perspective. and we had a frenzy happening for buying,
Right.
in the last year or early part of this year as well. So that change has happened because of a lot of certainty from the law perspective, but there are some changes that are required to be done.
Sir,
And a very quick second would be the land digitization, which has been done in pockets right now. That is something which needs to get done. And somewhere, we've got, examples from a, let's say, Middle East point of view, Dubai side of it, while it's a very small area, but the fact that every transaction can happen digitally,
Right,
they're including buying, selling,
It's a big
registering as well.
exercise
It's
for
big
a
thing.
country like India, but yes, land digitization and making RERA more effective, is what Neeraj Bansal says are the two policy reforms that can bring big change or big transformation or big upliftment in Indian real estate. But on a personal note, Neeraj ji, I want to ask you, 27 years in consulting business and more, many more to come. What keeps you excited about real estate, about your work? What keeps you excited? हम लोग तो 10 साल बाद सोचने लगते हैं, अरे 10 साल बहुत हो गया. So, what keeps you going on?
No, I think, see, from a consulting perspective, I think, work never gets old. Every day you've got new opportunities, new things to learn. So I think I've been blessed that, there's opportunities to meet new people, learn from them, do new things as well. I think solving the unstructured problems, is a thrill, which we get as consultants around it. Real estate offers many, on a continuous basis around it. And the fact that there is so much to do in the sector still. I think when you spoke about a bit of mature perspective there in that, we would get to that maturity, I think another 10 years to 12 years perspective in that, when we have got more proliferation of institutional capital, across the country there in that, because that brings with it a need for a lot of governance, transparency, standard upliftment around it. And some of the law, let's say when law starts to cope up, then we'll see this change happen in a big way there in that.
No, it's very inspiring to know that, what keeps you excited is solving new challenges and contributing to India's growth story. So that's very inspiring. And let me thank you on behalf of everyone here. Thank you so much for that very insightful and engaging conversation and sharing your optimism for Indian real estate with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sapna. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Can we have the token of appreciation, please? And a big round of applause for Neeraj ji. Can we have the token of appreciation, please? Quickly on stage. I request करूँगा सपना को please kindly hand over the token of appreciation to Neeraj ji. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, can I request all of you, please, जोर से बजाइए ताली. You don't get Mr. Bansal very easily, like he's always traveling with multiple work commitments. So बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया for joining us over here. Thank you so much.